Your mom said it was fine. She said this was her land now. The guy didn't even look up. He just kept working, like he was telling me the weather. I stood there at the edge of what used to be my backyard fence, watching strangers tear apart the ground I owned, and I felt something cold move through my chest. Not panic, not tears, something quieter than that. Something that said, they actually did it. I looked around at the broken posts, the upturned dirt, my garden completely gone, and I understood exactly what was happening. Then I pulled out my phone and made 2 calls, one to my lawyer, one to 911. My name is Delanie. I'm 34 years old. I'm not famous. I'm not wealthy. I work as a logistics coordinator for a mid-sized shipping company, which basically means I spend my days making sure other people's things get to where they need to go, on time, without excuses. It's steady work. It's honest work. Nobody at family dinners ever asked me about it. The house came from my grandmother. She passed 3 years ago, and when the will was read, she left the property to me. Not to my mother, not to my sister, to me. The family acted like she had lost her mind. My aunt said she was confused at the end. My mother said it was a mistake that needed to be corrected. My sister didn't say anything. She just looked at me with that flat, measuring look she's had since we were kids. But my grandmother wasn't confused. She was the sharpest person I've ever known, and she made her decision clearly, with a lawyer present, with documentation, while she was completely healthy. I wasn't the favorite. I wasn't the one they praised at dinners or held up as an example, but my grandmother saw something in me they refused to. So I took the house. I paid the property taxes every year. I kept the utilities on. I fixed the porch when it started to sag. I built a small, quiet life there, and I didn't make a big deal out of any of it. That was apparently a mistake, because when you're quiet, some people decide your silence means permission. If someone in your family ever decided that what was yours was actually theirs, subscribe right now because I need you in this community. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever had to defend something that was already legally yours? I want to hear every word. And if this story is already hitting close to home, click hype so others can find it too. Let's get into it. It was a Tuesday afternoon in late October. The air smelled like cut grass and something chemical, like fresh concrete or adhesive, something sharp and out of place. I pulled into my driveway after work and just sat in my car for a moment because I couldn't make sense of what I was looking at. There were 2 trucks parked on the street. A crew of 4 men was working in my backyard. The back fence, the one I had repainted myself 2 summers ago, was completely gone. The garden my grandmother had started, and I had kept going for 3 years, the tomatoes, the herbs, the small rose bush in the corner, was torn up and pushed to the side in a brown, tangled pile. I got out of the car. My legs felt strange, like the ground wasn't quite solid. I walked around to the back, and the crew foreman met me at the side gate, or what was left of it. "You the daughter?" he asked. "I'm the owner," I said. He nodded like those were the same thing and handed me a printed authorization form. My mother's name was on it, under the field that said property owner. Her name, her signature, her phone number. And then I heard her voice. She was standing near the back door of my house, which she had apparently let herself into, holding a coffee mug and talking to my sister like they were supervising a kitchen remodel. "Mom," my voice came out flat, "what is this?" She turned around and smiled, patient and slightly tired, the way she always looked at me when she thought I was about to be difficult. "We're adding a guest suite. It's for the family, Delanie. Don't make this weird." My sister laughed softly and looked away. I walked over to the crew's equipment table and picked up the clipboard sitting there. The renovation plans were detailed: architectural drawings, a materials list, a projected completion date. I flipped through the pages slowly, and that's when I saw it. This was not a guest suite. The layout showed a self-contained unit with a separate entrance, a kitchenette, its own bathroom. The plan notes at the bottom referenced rental income potential and listed my mother and sister as the managing parties. They weren't building for the family. They were building a rental unit on my property so they could collect the income. And the permit had been filed weeks ago. I confronted my mother that evening after the crew left. I kept my voice level because I needed her to talk, not shut down. I asked her directly how she had filed a permit on property she didn't own. She waved her hand. "You don't even use that backyard. We're improving the value. You should be thanking us." "Mom, you don't own this property. You can't file permits on land that belongs to me." She looked at me for a moment, and then she said something that told me exactly how far she had taken this. "Go ahead and call the city if you want. The permit's already approved. You're too late." She said it calmly. She said it like she had already won. I didn't respond. I left. A few days later, there was a family dinner at my aunt's house. I went because I wanted to watch. I needed to understand how wide this had spread. My mother stood at the head of the table and talked about the renovation like it was a beautiful family project, a legacy investment, something to be proud of. My aunts nodded. My uncle raised his glass. Nobody said my name. Nobody acknowledged that the property in question belonged to me. I sat at the far end of the table and listened to my own family celebrate taking something from me. My cousin leaned over at one point and whispered, "Just let them have it, Delanie. You always make everything a fight." I looked at her and didn't say a word. 3 days after that, my sister called me. Her voice was soft and warm, the version of her voice she used when she wanted something. "I just want to talk, Del. I feel like things got tense and I hate that." "I'm listening," I said. "Mom's been struggling, you know that. You have this whole house, and she has nothing. Is it really that serious to you? Is a backyard worth all of this?" Part of me felt it, that pull, because she's my sister, and there's a history there that doesn't just disappear. But then I thought about the facts. My mother owned her car outright. She took 2 vacations in the last year, one to Florida, one to visit friends out west. My older brother sent her money every single month without fail. She was not struggling. She was entitled, and my sister knew the difference. I said, "I hear you." And then I hung up and opened my documentation folder.
Here's what they didn't know. I'm not a paranoid person, but I am an organized one. It's the logistics brain. I keep records of everything related to that house. Every tax payment, every utility bill, every insurance renewal, every receipt for repairs. I have a folder, physical and digital, that goes back to the day the property transferred into my name. So when that forged permit surfaced, I didn't panic. I requested the original filing from the city permit office, and I read through every page carefully. They had forged my signature, not just my mother's signature claiming ownership. They had also included a notarized authorization document with my name on it, a signature that was supposed to be mine, consenting to the renovation. It wasn't my signature, not even close. I sat with that for a long moment. My hands were steady. My mind was very clear. They used my name on a legal document, and that changed everything, because this wasn't a family dispute about property lines or inheritance feelings anymore. This was fraud, document fraud, criminal forgery. Those are not civil matters you settle at a dinner table. I let the renovation continue for 4 more days. I needed them comfortable. I needed them committed. I photographed the crew working each morning with timestamps. I photographed the equipment, the materials, the damage to the yard. I saved the voicemail my mother had left me earlier that week, the one where she said, "Don't worry about the paperwork, I handled it." I printed the contractor invoices that had been mailed to my address in my mother's name. I built a file, and then I made a phone call. Mr. Ashford had handled my grandmother's estate. He was the one who drafted her will, walked her through the process, and filed the deed transfer when she passed. He was in his late 60s, quiet, methodical, the kind of man who never said more than he needed to. When I explained what had happened, he was silent for a moment and then said, Your grandmother warned me this might happen. I kept copies of everything. I closed my eyes. He reviewed the forged permit the same week. He confirmed what I already knew. The notarized signature in my name was fraudulent. The ownership claim on the permit application was false. And together, those two things constituted deed fraud and criminal forgery under state law. He told me not to confront anyone, not to tell anyone what I was doing, and to let him guide the timing. Meanwhile, my mother started showing the neighbors the construction. I watched from my front window one afternoon as she walked our neighbor from across the street, through the backyard, gesturing at the foundation work, smiling, talking about the finished unit like it was already hers. My sister posted photos of the site on social media. The caption said, "Making moves for the family." I wasn't tagged. My name didn't appear anywhere. In their version of events, I didn't exist. They had already decided I was a detail they had handled. That was their biggest mistake, thinking I was handled. On a Saturday morning, the crew arrived at 8. My mother and sister got there by 9, coffee in hand, ready to supervise. The morning smelled like sawdust and dried mud, and the sounds of the work had become almost routine at that point. The hum of tools, the crew talking among themselves, the occasional thud of materials being moved. At 9:45, a city code enforcement vehicle parked in front of my house. 2 police officers pulled up right behind it. I was standing on my front porch. My mother came around from the backyard when she heard the doors. She walked toward the officers with the confident stride of someone who believed she was untouchable. "There must be a mistake. I authorized this project." The officer looked at her calmly. "Ma'am, according to county records, you have no ownership interest in this property." She blinked. She opened her mouth and closed it. I walked down the porch steps and handed the code enforcement officer my folder. Original deed in my name, 3 years of property tax records, the forged permit with the flagged signature, Mr. Ashford's signed affidavit detailing the fraudulent notarization. My mother turned to me. Her voice was shaking, but I could hear the anger underneath it. "You called the cops on your own family?" I looked at her. I felt nothing dramatic in that moment. No grief, no satisfaction, just clarity. "No, Mom. I called them on someone who forged my name on a legal document and tore up my property without my consent. That's not a family matter. That's a crime."
The crew was ordered to stop immediately. Tools went down, the foreman stepped aside and started answering questions, cooperative and visibly relieved to have the situation clarified. My sister came around from the back and started talking loudly, trying to explain, trying to reframe what was happening. 3 neighbors had come outside by then. She didn't seem to realize that every word she said in front of witnesses was making things worse. Mr. Ashford arrived 40 minutes later. He handed my mother a formal written notice. Any further unauthorized entry onto the property would constitute criminal trespass. The forged permit had been referred to the district attorney's office for review. He said it the way he said everything, quietly, without drama, and that quiet made it land harder than any argument could. My mother didn't say anything after that. She just looked at me, and then she left. The work stopped that day and didn't resume. The contractor cooperated fully with investigators and was cleared of wrongdoing once it became clear he had been misled about ownership. My mother and sister were notified that they were under formal fraud inquiry. No immediate arrest, but the process had started, and that process doesn't stop once it begins. The aunts and uncles who had raised their glasses at that dinner went silent. Nobody called to check on me. Nobody reached out to apologize. The family performance they had all been applauding simply collapsed, and they quietly stepped away from the wreckage. I had a contractor I trusted come in and repair the back fence. I cleared the debris from the garden, turned the soil, and planted new seeds. It was November, too late for most things to grow, but I planted them anyway. I fixed what they broke. I restored what they had taken without asking. The evening after the fence was finished, I sat on my back porch. The air was cold and still. The yard was quiet. I didn't call anyone. I didn't post anything. I just sat there and breathed and let it settle.
My grandmother didn't leave me that house by accident. She knew this family. She knew exactly how they thought and what they were capable of, and who among us could be trusted to protect something real. She chose me on purpose, and when the moment came, I understood why. Turns out, so did I. Has someone in your family ever helped themselves to what was yours, money, property, and opportunity, and then acted like you were the problem for speaking up? Tell me in the comments. I want to hear it. Subscribe to this community because we don't let entitlement win here. And click hype to help this story reach everyone who's ever had to stand their ground over something that was already theirs. Standing up for yourself is tough, especially when it's family. If you've been there, subscribe and become part of our community. Let me know this story helped by clicking hype, and tell me where you're watching from. I love seeing how far these stories travel.